having the garden and doing a lot of this stuff, is that I remembered what my grandparents did, even in the 90s, and periods of, like I said, periods of great abundance. When you could buy unlimited quantities of whatever at any grocery
Hmm.
store. My grandparents were still growing it in their backyard. As my parents got married next to their garden shed in 1981.
That's
So,
funny.
so, and there's photographic evidence of this. So it's like, you know, I'm there. I have a picture of my grandmother on my refrigerator in the house, and I look at that picture sometimes and I go, man, I really wish that I hadn't taken that for granted when I was younger, because I'm definitely needing it now, and I'm definitely needing to pass it on.
This is the Farm Hop Life Podcast, a traveling homestead family. I'm Matt DeRosier. On the Farm Hop Life Podcast, we learn what it takes to grow your own food from everyday people. Could be a college student, grows tomatoes and salad greens on their apartment patio, a former VP of marketing for Del Taco now raising cattle in Montana, or someone who hasn't had a homestead in over 10 years. This show is aimed at teaching you what it takes to make homesteading work for you, that we all make mistakes, we all have bad days, but we can reach out and help one another thrive, and giving you the confidence needed to go feed yourself.
It really ain't
Because
much
you're
else
in,
to do.
oh man, remind me what state you're in.
Tennessee.
Tennessee, that's right. I thought it was Tennessee.
Yeah.
Did I see that your water broke or something like that? What happened there?
Okay. That's a funny story. So, the so I don't know how much you know about well systems.
A
Like,
little bit. I have one.
yeah.
Wish I
So,
knew more about it.
who doesn't? So the well pump feeds the pressure tank. The pressure tank feeds the house. So, in some well systems, there's they like to put a yard hydrant between the pressure tank and the house. And what I was reading about this, because I was trying to figure out what was going on very quickly, they like to put that in there for like water testing sometimes. Well, people I spoke to said they can do it or they don't do it. It just depends, really. So uh, the, this is a very long story. They had in long story short, the property was overgrown for years. It'd probably been overgrown for a decade or more. So a bunch of trees had sprouted up around the yard hydrant where the wellhead was, and in the area where the pressure tank was. So I was trying to clear that area, and I had managed to maneuver the tractor. I've got because a tractor was left out here. It's also a long story, and I managed to maneuver the tractor in to push a tree out of the way. Well, if you're hooking up a yard hydrant, you should never hook steel pipe to PVC, because the steel's not going to last nearly as long, especially when it's been in the
Sure.
ground for 40 years. And from because I never even touched the yard hydrant with the tractor, and what I'm guessing is that the ground pressure from the tractor ruptured the water line
Oh,
that
jeez.
that fed that yeah and that fed that particular yard hydrant. So all of a sudden there's water shooting out of the ground from where I pushed it over, and I was like, well, this is fun. This
How
is real fun.
shallow was that pipe then? If the pressure
Well,
from the tractor cracked it.
the frost depth here is to get below the frost depth here, it's only 18 inches.
Okay. That's still
So
a good ways down.
yeah, it's not terrible. I mean, I can hand dig it. Uh, I don't like to, but I
Right.
have, clearly. So I got down there and I pulled that yard hydrant out, and I was trying to connect or reconnect it. So like I had a well company come out, and they sent one of their technicians out, and he looked at it and he said, "We can do the work, but this is something that you could really do yourself." I said, okay, well, I've never really done PVC work before, so this is a good learning moment for me to break some more stuff.
Right.
But he kind of looked around where all the piping was, and he went, "You really need to get these tree stumps out of the way." And I said, "I'm on it." And so on the front end of my tractor, I've got what's called a ratchet rake on there. It's like a piece of 3/8 inch steel, and it's got triangular shaped tines that face down and triangular
Okay.
tines that face out. So I managed to get part of the ratchet rake onto one of these stumps. Well, when I pulled the stump out, it ripped all of that out, like all the way to the little supply valve that feeds the house. So I went from having one small problem to
Oh,
having
wow.
a very large problem.
I'm looking at those ratchet rakes. That looks gnarly.
Oh yeah, and that what I've got is the forestry version. So the ratchet rake's got the standard ratchet rake uses like a wire or a piece of nylon webbing. The one that I had to go buy a chain for, so it chains to the front of my
Jeez.
bucket, and I pulled that thing out, and apparently the roots had just wrapped around the piping and just right out of the ground.
Oh, geez.
And it made one problem. It made one small problem way worse. So I ended up having to dig that up and put in a new supply valve in line with all the rest of the stuff. And I made sure that this one was brass, so it's not going anywhere for a while.
There you go.
Yeah, and I used a piece of like 4 or 6 inch PVC and backfilled it with gravel underneath it.
Yeah.
So it's not going anywhere for a very long time.
But you fixed it.
Uh,
You got water again.
yeah. Oh yeah. I needed the water, and I was doing all this on my birthday. And at the time, I was also involved in a lawsuit for a car accident that I had been in 5 years prior. So I had to give
Happy
I had to give a
birthday.
deposition uh, uh, over the computer, over Skype or Zoom that morning. So they're like, yeah, if you're done, they said, yeah, you're done with your deposition. You can go if you have something else to do. Yep, sure do.
Oh, jeez.
So yeah, it was that was a very interesting about a week or so trying to get that back together. But I
That's
was
funny.
my wife was entertained. She thought that was hilarious.
As long as she thought that that not having water was funny. Yeah. Yeah,
She
honey. That's funny. That's hilarious.
she had a friend. She had a friend she can go stay with. So it wasn't like we were.
There you
She was
go.
totally without. Uh, it was
That's
just an
pretty good.
interesting. It was an interesting It was an interesting week there.
Yeah. You had said that the property had stupid internet. The property's been overgrown for I don't know, like 10 years. So
Yeah, probably more than that.
are you
So
new to it? Are you new to this property?
I am. So when we moved out here in 2020, uh, it was a couple of months after the previous owner had passed away. He died in like February of 2020. He'd been sick for a very long time. He'd probably been sick for 15 or 20 years, like a long-term cancer kind of thing. So he didn't really care much for the land because he just physically could not.
Sure.
So, like in areas where there had been grazing pasture or pens for animals or something like that that he had before that, it had basically turned into a pine forest. And pine I've learned is very prolific and will spread very quickly, kind of like bamboo, but not as difficult to get rid of. So, excuse me, he had just let it go over the, you know, 20 years that he had been 15 or 20 years that he'd been sick. So
Sure.
when we got here, or when the property went on the market. So let's this kind of goes into something that we had messaged back and forth is getting started.
Mm-hmm.
Was I had lived in a neighborhood pretty much, or an apartment pretty much my entire life. I had helped out on farms before, but somewhere around, see, I'm also a cancer survivor. I had cancer in 2011, testicular cancer. So like somewhere after 2011, I had decided that it was time to, or I was starting to think about, like, what, say this, like being more free, I guess you could say, and not having to live this continuous lifestyle of, my neighbor's a stone's throw away, and they can see everything that I'm doing in my backyard and all that other stuff. And so I had decided that about that time, and I kind of branched into it from prepping, like a lot of preppers talk about, we need to stockpile, X amount of food and water and all that. And I was like, well, why don't I just do that all myself? So it just kind of became a natural extension of that desire to not be wrapped around the grocery store life. And if we're out of something or good, because what happens if the grocery stores go away? You don't have that kind of, you don't have the infrastructure there to support your own self, and things get really desperate really fast. So I kind of made the decision that we needed to get out. I kind of ended up sidetracked during that period of time because I personally ended up, my first wife didn't, I'm divorced and then remarried. And my first wife wasn't too keen on all of this previous setups, and that kind of caused some friction. And there were some other things involved, but it's either
Sure.
near or there. Uh, but I had still always had that desire to get out of the neighborhood, to have more space and be more independent and more self-sufficient. So, I ended up getting remarried, and then we had another, my wife now and I had another child, which was number 4 for us. I had 2 in my previous marriage, and then she brought a stepdaughter, and then we had another daughter, and it only increased my desire about 2018 or 2019 when I looked out my window and saw a drug deal going on right across the street. And I said, I told my wife, I said, I think, and I've seen drug deals before because I work in the city. I work for the closest major city here. I've seen that kind of stuff before. And I said,
Sure.
that's not stuff that I want to raise children around, or it makes me a target. So because when they end up in a gun battle or something like that, then I end up in the middle of the crossfire, and that's nowhere that I wanted to be. So my wife was a real estate agent at the time, and we made the decision that it was time to get out. And uh, we were looking and looking and looking, and she had automated searches set up through MLRS, and was looking and looking, and nothing really came up. And then I remember the day that this property hit the market, and it came with a tractor, and there was a barn and 2 garages and the house, and acreage that we were looking for. And I said, that's the one. And we made it happen. And it was heartbreaking moving out of the neighborhood because I spent probably more than a decade in that house that we were in, and it hurt to move, but ultimately it was a better decision. And
Yeah.
so that's kind of how we ended up out here. And said, from living in a neighborhood or something like that, but helping out on farms, I had a little bit of knowledge. But I've
Right.
kind of had to expand my knowledge base very quickly.
Yeah.
So it's been an interesting time, to say the least.
Yeah. It sounds like we got we have similar start times. So like we finished building this house in March of 2020. So I can't remember if we started our garden, like our little dinky raised beds the year before, the year I don't remember. But so I'm curious, like, so how far along are you on your homesteading? Like, so what do you got? You got a garden, you got chickens, any other livestock, or
Well, so our garden has been kind of a work in progress.
always is?
Oh yeah, certainly. I was and still very am into like traditional Native American planting
Okay.
strategies. So like the Three Sisters and things that go with it. And then uh, I was doing before we moved out in the neighborhood, I was doing raised beds at the house, and we had a lot of success with uh, like green beans and tomatoes and stuff like that. We had a lot of success with that. And then we've managed to can a bunch of our green beans from the last couple of years. Still trying to figure out like when's the best time to do corn and stuff like that. Like and squash, we just kind of fry or whatever. But uh, we grew all these things, and then we're still trying to figure out how to use them. So yeah,
I hear you.
it's a work in progress. And then like with the area that we've got, the last garden that we had was out in the pasture. So it was a pretty good sized area. It was like corn and squash and I had done the mounds and stuff like that and how to set it up, and it was marginally successful. But uh, we decided to move it a little bit closer to the house because in this part of Tennessee it gets ungodly hot in the summertime. Uh, like I mean, you step outside in the morning time before the sun is even up, and you're already sweating. That kind of hot, and yeah. So
No
we
thanks.
decided that it was probably better to move it closer to the house. So we've been in the process of putting in like more permanent raised beds. And that was some of my more recent YouTube stuff and stuff on Instagram was using galvanized steel and building a garden beds for that. So we're still in the progress of getting that set up, but hopefully within the next week or so we should have those ready to go. So
Nice.
and then I'm still trying to find because I had planned it out to be direct. Half of it was going to be direct sow kind of stuff. Like we were still going to hang out with the native styles, the native patterns, but also have like raised beds and have other stuff. So there's been a lot of math involved about like the minimum square footage necessary for
Yeah.
each person, like using the Victory Garden kind of math from the 40s. It's like it requires. They talk about they don't require it, but they talk about so many square footage uh, per person, and we
Yeah.
always figure it on 6 people because there's 6 people in the family, but they're not always all here.
Sure.
So we always want to have extra,
Yeah.
and the extra we can or do whatever. So and
Yeah.
then
I'll send you a link. So Scott Miller from my men's forum that we have on Mondays. He's got his own podcast, Thriving the Future podcast. He's selling a spreadsheet of like it's like a calculator that it's like this calculator that he made for himself that calculates, how much, how many people are in your family, how much of each kind. So exactly what you're talking about. And so like all the math like gets done for you. And so it was like 10 or $15 or something like that and so like, yeah, I picked it up because I was curious and help support him a little bit. So yeah, I can send you a link to that
oh, that's great.
if you like. Yeah.
But so in addition to the garden, we've also got chickens, and we got 13 hens. We had one die like 2 weeks ago, probably from a fight that went bad
Mm,
uh, inside the coop over
sure.
pecking order and stuff. I mean, it is what it is.
Yeah.
So, but the 13 we've got are turning out just fine. So we always have extra that I end up selling. Uh, and I've got a couple of customers for those. So that's been nice to kind of, and that kind of feeds into you know, feeds into ideas about building community and stuff like that.
Yeah.
That's a great way. As a friend of mine said that selling farm fresh eggs to people that are looking for them is a great way to win hearts and minds.
Yes, exactly. I've been giving them away lately, but we're going to switch into selling them again.
Yeah,
We
he
stopped
had
for a
yeah
while
he's
during the molt,
and
but
that's something that I've been trying to do uh, because I'm not new to the area, but I'm new to like a lot of these people, and
yeah.
we've and I talk about this a lot too. Is that if you're going to be homesteading somewhere, or you're going to have resources, and this goes back to and this also kind of talks about the idea about like the prepping aspect and things like that. Is that if you're going to have resources, it would be a good idea to get to know the people around you, because sharing is caring. You know,
Yeah.
like my neighbors have chickens, but they don't have a garden, and they're elderly folks on both sides of me, and they're a little bit too elderly to garden. So
Mm,
it makes a lot of sense. They have chickens because that's pretty easy to do, but we can provide our overage, and they can help us out when we need, like they've got heavy equipment, and I'm doing this on a budget,
yeah.
very small budget, and they've got heavy equipment and I don't. So it comes down to like, bartering here and there, or
Right.
I help them out with some other things around their place, and they help me out with some other things around mine. So it's important to get to know your neighbors
Oh yeah.
and build that community, and build a friendship. Like I was introduced to the neighbors to my east, or to my west, because they had seen that the gate that was previously locked was open, and that they could hear chainsaws in the background. Well, when this property was overgrown, I was having to cut down, 5 and 6 trees, in a
Yeah.
5 or 6 hour time frame, just to be able to clear the land out. So they heard people working back here, so they came back and introduced themselves, and we've been friends ever since. So that's just the
Excellent.
kind of things that people that are getting into it, like, if you don't want to you don't want to alienate your neighbors, and you definitely don't want to, like, ignore them simply because you're self-sufficient. Not everybody is self-sufficient. Everybody's always
Right.
got something to
Yeah.
share, whether it's knowledge or equipment or both, you know. So
Did I see that you made a PVC chicken feeder?
oh yeah. So
Is that
I
working
actually
out pretty well?
yeah, I copied that as I said on YouTube, it was a copy of a copy.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody had so it's based off of the Dynachuck that you can find on Amazon,
Okay.
but somebody had found somebody had kind of built their own out of PVC pipe, and I kind of modified that even more, because the way that they had built theirs was overly complicated and required too many parts. And my educational background's in engineering.
Sure.
So when I was looking at the parts, like, well, that's the same as this, and I can use this part to do that. So made a couple of logical modifications and changed one of the reducers and shortened one of the sections, and here we go. I got two of them. I put two of them out there now and feeding the chickens. So when I'm feeding them crumble now, but I was using pellets before.
Yeah.
It's kind of hard to figure out what they like.
It is.
It's like the crumble's easier. The crumble's easier to use on them because they don't have to peck it apart.
Right.
But at the same time, crumble is more easily wasted. So
yeah, that's true. So another guy from Immense Forum, how I met him is I saw a video on TikTok where he uses a deer feeder to feed his chickens. And so I load pellets in the deer feeder and it just spins and throws the pellets everywhere. Yeah. Well, every once in a while I'll be like, why are the chickens like following me like they're hungry? And so I go to look and like the pellets get like it's just perfect where they don't drop down. Like they're all like bound up on each other. And so you just like hit it with your hand and they all like drop down and it's fine. But like that part still really annoys me. So I'm still looking for other methods to feed them with.
Yeah, that PVC feeder is a good choice. My wife swears that there isn't enough.
Isn't enough feed?
Well, it doesn't feed them enough. She's talking about capacity. Because it's based on a 4-inch PVC pipe, and I've thought about expanding it out 2 inches to 6-inch, but that would involve changing one of the reducers down to 6 in order to get the same kind of effect. Like if you, and I haven't experimented with this much, but I've thought about it. I put quite a bit of thought into it, actually, is that if so the pipe that feeds the feed into the bottom of the feeder is 2 inches in diameter nominal. So I'm wondering if making it larger would cause more feed to drop or the same amount of feed but slower. Or if it's a balancing act because you don't want to drop a ton of it on them because they're gonna gorge it all,
right? And
then you don't want to drop too little of it because then they're not going to get the proper amount of nutrition. So there's kind of a balance to be struck in there. It's just a matter of finding it. I'm pretty sure I could do it with a 6-inch tubing, but it's just at the moment I don't really have the time to experiment with it. I've got way other projects to handle. Yeah. So
look, I just made this one. Isn't this good enough for now?
I think that's close to about what I told my wife. It's like I just did 2. What more do you want?
That's funny. Oh man, that's funny. So, what are some other things that have worked well for you on your property?
Man, so so talking about the chickens is that right now they're pretty much all on the run. I was building the run when they were really worried about like avian flu, like the bird flu they were culling, thousands of chickens in these, and that was another thing that we had talked about is that the egg supply and the chicken supply is pretty fragile based on these, that a lot of these things come from these industrial farms.
Yeah.
And, you just saw 15,000 cows burn up in a barn.
Something like that. 15, 18,000. Yeah.
So that has a depending on where you're at, a pretty severe effect. So we were worried about bird flu and stuff like that. So I really up-armored the run, like a lot of like so like I've used I use the 1/4-inch welded wire. I ended up having to buy the proper size off of Amazon. You can actually do that. They've got like 100-foot rolls of 1/4-inch welded wire. and they'll ship it right to you.
When you say 1/4 inch welded wire, is that kind of like hardware cloth or what?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, okay, I see.
But
Yep,
it's literally just the welded wire, like in the square form.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's some people call it hardware cloth, some people, but it's basically 1/4 inch welded wire. And I use that to an extreme. Like I used it everywhere. Like anywhere there was a gap, there's welded wire to hardware cloth in order to counter it.
Yeah.
So I've definitely up engineered a lot of stuff, so that's worked pretty well. We've got coyotes and stuff around here. They've got two of our barn cats, I think, maybe.
Oh, geez.
We've had two barn cats just disappear, so maybe the coyotes got them, or maybe they're chasing another cat somewhere else. But
Yeah.
we can hear them out there. Like I shot a deer out in the pasture last year, and I could hear the coyotes off in the distance while I'm field dressing it. So it's like, gotta get out of here. I'm going to be fighting coyotes with this rifle before too long.
Sure.
So the predation is preventing predation. The thing has really focusing on preventing predation on those animals has been really effective. Circular planting, like when we did the Native American style, like circular Three Sisters kind of garden, that really worked. That worked out really well.
Can you explain what that is?
So the Three Sisters or the
Yeah.
Okay, so the Three Sisters, for it's corn. It's usually a form of dent corn or some kind of ground corn you can grind.
Okay.
And it's squash and beans, like
Okay.
a climbing bean, not a bush bean. So the way that it works is it's one of the earliest known forms of companion planting.
Okay. Yep.
So
I just never heard of the Three Sisters. Have I heard of the Three Sisters thing before? I'm not sure, but yeah, you use the squash is like ground cover with the big leaves, and the beans climb the corn.
And the corn, yeah. We did that in a circular garden. So like in the center there were 4 mounds that had corn on them, and then we would move out, and then so we didn't necessarily plant the squash in the same mounds as the beans and the corn. We would plant the squash in between the mounds with those. So, but as they grew, it made watering really efficient.
Yeah.
Because you could put the watering equipment right in the middle, and then it would go. You could set the sprinkler to go around and around, and it would water everything. But that leads that that was another problem that we had decided to troubleshoot from last year was our water supply locations, about where we would put yard hydrants and things like that.
Yeah.
So like that's a different problem. That deals with the well, and so
Yeah.
and going back to what was out here prior is that, according to the neighbors, and this is knowing your neighbors, is that this was he did hogs beforehand. So there's like different pens in different areas that are fenced off for that where hogs were, and so my guess was there was one way out on the property, because there's several yard hydrants in those areas where they would have been feeding or drinking. So we've got to relocate a lot of those in order to better service. And then my wife decided, hey, this used to be a pig place, so maybe we can get pigs now. It's like, why did I say anything at all? It's like every time there's a cool project, my wife is like, hey, let's do this. All right, well, I'm thinking in terms of hours. How many hours will this take me to complete? So, but
Yeah.
I've always, I'm the of the pair of us, I'm the temperate one. I'm the one that's always thinking about like, okay, well, we're gonna need fencing and wiring and you know the proper equipment, and we're gonna have to run water to it. So and she's like, always the idea person. So it works well.
Yeah. Yeah, you need both. You really do. Like how like hey, that's a good idea, but then you need somebody like how to like execute the plan.
And
Yeah.
that comes from that engineering background. Is that I think a lot about
Yeah.
materials that we're going to need and where we're going to get them, and dimensions and mathematics and things like that. And it's funny because I was never good at math until I got out here, and then even doing design plans, I always double checked it against computers, and then I got out here and it's like, oh man, I need math a lot more than I thought I did. Even running cable or designing sprinkler systems or whatever for buildings, it was like, okay, well, now I need math even more because you've got to, the buildings that you're building have to be square, and there's a certain way to do that. And then
Yeah.
so I was always very hands-on, and then when I had education on top of that, it was pretty wild. So
What's some stuff that hasn't worked well?
uh really, pretty much everything hasn't worked well. Like maybe, and that's maybe a function of my own wishful thinking, or too high of expectations.
Sure.
Yeah, but things worked marginally well. It's just that I didn't think when I got out here that I would have to fix nearly as much as I did.
Mm,
I kind of just expected a lot of things to work on their own, and that I wouldn't have to, like things would work when they need to. It's like, well, today, yeah, and even today, expectations. We'll say expectations haven't really worked well. Uh, I mean, it's
you're up
true.
here, they need to be down here.
Yeah, exactly. I've got what do they say? They said I've got champagne dreams on a beer budget.
Yeah.
That's pretty much it. It's like today, like I'm framing in a wall section because I'm doing an interior project, for the next couple of weeks, and I come home and check my mail, and my mailbox falls off of the. I just kind of like something else. There's always something else. So
Just duct tape.
it's just
That later.
expectations. Like yeah, like it's always something, and
Yeah.
there have been a lot of times where I just go, man, it's always something, but it is what it is. So
Always
you get
something,
over it.
never nothing. Always something, never nothing.
Yeah. You've definitely got to have an open mind, and God laughs at your schedule frequently, or
Yeah, absolutely. So you mentioned being an engineer, having an engineering background, and in your YouTube videos, it also says Homestead handyman. Is that just like being a handyman on your property, or do you actually go do handyman stuff for other people as well?
uh, yes and no. So many years ago, I and I had decided that, hey, I can start my own business as part of part of trying to be more self sufficient was to have my own kind of income stream, even if it was part time, or to have a different income stream from my primary job, and mostly to assuage boredom. So I'm pretty good with I'm pretty handy because I'm a handyman. So I was fixing a lot of stuff. Like I think one of my first jobs was resealing was recalking a bathroom. I did another job for a guy who was who was coincidentally also a homesteader at the time.
Hmm.
I built stairs for him, or steps for him at his house. Uh, I like to think I did that job well. Uh, so like I was like offering up skills to do just about pretty much anything. Like I was fixing appliances and doing all that kinds of stuff. And then when the pandemic hit, when 2020 started, uh, I started using a TaskRabbit.
Yes.
So like I was doing like a lot of like I think one of the first jobs I had with TaskRabbit was mounting ceiling fans in some person's house, and then I was mounting a lot of TVs because people were watching TV a whole lot, and I was more than happy to take their money to do it. So
Yeah.
I got really good with tools and stuff like that, and just picked up some stuff that I had learned along the way. And I had a guy that I worked with who basically hired me as his at the time basically as his handyman. When he had jobs that were like contractors wouldn't take, but
Yeah, they're too small.
it could be done in a couple hours in an afternoon. I started doing a couple of those jobs here and there. So, and then like he was renovating a house in a neighborhood. So like I got a lot of hands on with painting and improvised carpentry and cabinetry. I ended up redoing in my old house. I redid the kitchen. Like so it was a galley kitchen that had like an L angle bar, and nobody uses bars anymore in kitchens. So I deleted that and was like running cable and wiring to put the refrigerator there. So I picked up a lot of skills on my own. I picked up a lot of skills doing other things for a lot of people, other things that I'd been hired to do. So when I got out here, it was just a natural extension of
Yeah.
I was able to apply a lot of those modern techniques. And I found out this house was cobbled together from like, just kind of stuff that this guy could buy cheap somewhere else. So it was like not modern materials, not modern techniques. It was just kind of thrown together, like professional grade techniques. So like I was able to really renovate a lot of like part of the house that we needed to use right
Yeah.
away. I was able to do a lot of that, pretty quickly, simply because I had a lot of hands-on practice with it before. So when I started doing when I said the handyman stuff on the YouTube, it was just me fixing stuff out here that was broken, like the
Sure.
fan and putting in. I had a video for putting in workbenches that I moved around, ended up moving around later. Uh, so coming out here was just a natural extension of a lot of the things that I had been doing already. It was just higher stakes and doing a lot more of it. So,
Cool.
like now running chainsaws and stuff like that. And, it was just a natural extension of what I had already been doing. So,
Have you done any of that stuff for any of your like your newer neighbors? There you are.
yeah.
Have you done any of that kind of stuff for your new neighbors?
Uh, Not really. Uh, I've done a few things for a few people, but like my immediate neighbors, no, not really. They've like like my neighbors to the west, they've got hired hands that do a lot of that stuff. So they're
Oh,
like established, like the farm. Like I've got a farm to the east and a farm to the west.
yep.
So they've got hired hands or family that do all that stuff already. Well, they pay people to do already, but so I'm a paramedic. Like
Oh,
that's what I do for money now. It's my education is in engineering, but I've been a firefighter paramedic for 15 years, so 20 years probably. So like a lot of a lot of my interaction with them outside of friendly conversation comes at like I'm having this problem or I'm having that problem or what do you think about this? So, well, here's what I think and here's what I think you should do about it, kind of stuff.
Just go talk to your doctor.
And that's not necessarily a bad thing. It goes back to that community thing. That they know that they can call somebody and get an answer, and I can usually, if not me, then I can get somebody there to them pretty fast. I'm pretty well connected with those people that do that stuff
Yeah.
that aren't me. So
yeah, that's a that's a good connection to have through you.
and it's funny. So I kind of do airsoft sometimes.
Okay.
And a funny story about meeting my neighbor to the west or my neighbor to the east. We were out doing airsoft in the forest, back behind the house, and so like the cows. I don't know if you've interacted with cows very much, but they get particularly curious when they hear people.
Yep.
Especially if people are where food comes from, so they tend to congregate in that area. So we're out there doing our thing, and like all of the cows come to the fence where we're close to where we're at, and of course he gets curious about what's going on out there, and we're out there, toting around, toy guns and stuff like that. He's like, "What are y'all doing out here?" It's like, "Oh, we're just, playing around." He's like, "Okay, well, have a nice day." It's like, and then he found out. Then my neighbors to the east that I'm friends with called my wife, and we're like, "Hey, yeah, he had mentioned something about that," and we're like, "Yeah."
That's good.
Not exactly the most, cordial way to meet somebody, but yeah, it's a funny story that I like to share sometimes. We got made by the cows.
There you go. That's good. What's the best part about homesteading, do you think?
The best part?
Yeah, the best part.
The best part would be not having to do a whole lot of work, but
Then
no,
what would you do?
I
Play
really,
airsoft with cows?
oh yeah, that can be interesting. Sorry, I've developed an allergy, and the pollen here is kicking, so it's
Sure.
pretty rough. So the best part, really, what I've liked about it is that I can walk out of my house and I'm pretty secluded where I'm at, and so being back where I'm at is that being able to walk out of my house and not have to deal with the stress of worrying about if you're bothering your neighbors, or that's been kind of a nice part. Is having that real feeling of independence that I've kind of been yearning for the last, probably probably more, almost a decade now. It's kind of nice to be able to just do my own thing sometimes and not have to worry about other people thinking that you're kind of weird. But at the same time, you are kind of weird because you're not like, yeah, you're not like everybody else. I go to the grocery store to buy like things that I don't have on hand. I don't necessarily go to the grocery store to buy everything that I don't, that I need.
Sure.
I've either already stockpiled that, or I've sourced it here, or I can find it within the community itself. So that's kind of nice. And then even that, like your neighbors, my neighbors in general, my neighbors generally respect what I'm trying to do out here. Is that I'm trying to be I'm trying to live that American dream that everybody wants, is to not have to depend on the grid or the system, or that's the nice part, is just being yourself, being able to be where you're at and not have to worry about anybody else for the most part, but also at the same time having that community, being able to grow a community, and you've got customers and friends, customers that become friends, and you've got neighbors that are willing to help out. Like my neighbor, one of my neighbors, like there was a double wide trailer on the property, and one of my neighbors, like I hired a guy with a track hoe to come out and knock it down because the insurance companies wanted it knocked down. And he came over and helped me dispose of it, like even without even having to be asked. He's like, yeah, I just needed to get out and felt like being helpful, and it looked like you needed a hand. He's like, and if you need anything else, then you just can't find that kind of
Yeah.
stuff anywhere else. Is that when you've got a community of people that are willing to help out, and that's kind of something that my neighbors have lamented about before. Is like so like my neighbor to the west of me, he was saying that the people from the church, they came over and helped me frame the house and helped me do this, and we put up the barns and the fence, and we did this. And he's saying people just don't do that anymore, and that's part of building building that community is being able to. That's really the best part, is feeling that again. And I think that's what's really drawn a lot of people to this. What we've been trying to do is that they've felt that community that they haven't really felt in a long time. So
that's great.
Yeah, and like I said, you cannot with things the way they are these days. You cannot downplay the importance of having community, having people that you can call, or having neighbors that you trust, or people that you've helped do whatever and helped you do whatever. You just can't underestimate that enough, and especially with the way things are going sideways these days.
Yeah.
Or it certainly feels that way, depending on what everyone's perspective is. Each person is different how they view things. Is that you definitely need that kind of local connection to people around you, and it's nice to be able to build that.
Right. So going in like a little bit smaller, what about the family unit in homesteading? So like finding what like a role for each person in the family and like their role on the homestead. How do you do that?
Well, it's very much dependent upon ability. I mean, my 3-year-old can't do a whole lot, but she can help pick up toys,
Yeah.
or clean up small messes. And then my 9 and my 10-year-old, we have them out there. We'll have them out there, helping weed, pull small weeds in the garden, or if they see a ripe vegetable or a ripe fruit, they can pick it and bring it in. And and this is the first year we've had chickens, so they'll get to experience feeding the chickens and watering the chickens this year.
Nice.
And then my son, who's 14, he actually helped build the coop and the run last year. So he's kind of my right hand man, so to speak. Is that he's the one that helps me. Like if I say I need this done, I need this done, I need this done, and I want you to do, like, I give him something that he can physically manage. Like I need you to help, pick up the yard. Like if we had a storm roll through, it's like I need you to take the tractor down and do this, or I need you to gather sticks or help me pick up these branches, or like when I fell a tree, I need you to pull it out of the way, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then my wife, she kind of steps into those traditional, I hate to say gender role gaps, but it's a gender role, particularly in a traditional family style, is that she's really the motivator. Like, what is it? I don't know how biblical, things are in your listenership and stuff like that. It's like, but what is it? The Psalms 31 wife, I think it is Psalms 31. where she's like the manager of the household, and she
Mm,
arranges the servants for the day. Well, I call my children servants, but sometimes we kind of need you to do stuff. And she's the one that organizes the children to do everything.
sure.
And a lot of times she keeps me organized. And even though she's really the dreamer of the bunch, she really keeps me from getting into analysis paralysis. It's like it's time
Yeah.
to like it. That's the engineering part of me. Is like you've you've got to make a decision, and you've got to follow through, and you've got to do it now. Okay, well, all right, well, let me
Yeah. Yeah,
let
my
me
wife
figure it
helps
out.
me narrow my focus. Like, hey,
Yes,
this weekend, let's focus on this and this, and then if those two things get done, we can, maybe get to this third thing. But
yeah,
that's
precisely.
mhm.
That's precisely where I'm trying to go with that. Is that she dreams big, but she can also bring me right down to where I need to be. Like you need laser focus on these things, and you need to be
Yeah.
able to do them, within this allotted time frame. Okay, all right, now I'm with you.
Yeah, because my mind's over here, over here, over here, over here, and
Yeah,
like,
and like I'm pretty sure I've got some form of anxiety, just
mm,
from my work and previous life and all that other stuff,
sure.
and I'm pretty sure that I've got some level of traumatic anxiety from that. So like when I get wrapped up into a topic or wrapped up into something, it's like it's the cycle starts. And she really is like the one that goes smacks me out of it and says, "Hey, this is what why don't we focus on this and this and this?" Oh, okay. Okay, that knocks me out of the pattern and I can go right to it. So she 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 dreams big, but she can, like I said, she dreams big for sure, but she can definitely keep me where I need to be. And that's what I that's why it works so well out here between her and I. And this was kind of her idea too. So like, well,
Boy, that'd be tough if she wasn't in on it.
oh yeah, yeah. And I think that's where I had issues before. Is that you know uh, normalcy bias was kind of a thing, and this is probably a topic for another day. And we could probably spend hours talking about these things. Uh, but yeah, it is you've got to have buy-in, uh, from a spouse or you've got to have shared values and
Yeah.
shared ideas, and that's what makes these kinds of things work well. Otherwise, they'll fail 100% of the time.
Yes.
And I've seen it happen. I've seen it happen in households that weren't nearly as uh, where there weren't as many stakes as this one, and I've just seen it fail over and over and over again. Is that you've got to have shared values. You've got to have everybody has an equal voice, but there's got to be somebody that makes a decision, and that's really important in things like this. Is that somebody's got to say, okay, we're gonna. I've heard all the options, and this is what we're doing.
Yeah.
And from the biblical aspect, is that's always been a traditional gender role, and so that's the lead that I took, and that's the lead that she's chose to follow. So uh, is somebody's got to make a decision, but you've got to have everybody's got to have an equal voice, but somebody's got to make a decision, and
Right.
that's why it's 100% important to have those shared values, and but
Yeah,
everybody's got to have
absolutely.
that. Everybody's got to be equal to a point, but somebody's got to make a decision, and that's what's
Agreed.
worked so well out here, and that would be my advice to people going forward. Is that if you're married, And if you have a partner, or if you're married or you have a partner that's committed to this in the long term, is that you've got to have commitment. You've got to have shared values. Otherwise, it's just not going to work. And it just looks, it's terrible watching it fail. And I've been through divorce, and that whole deal with the court system, and having to deal with custody battles and child support, and it's a pain in the rear. It's terrible. If you have problems, please sort them out. But you got to have shared values, and if you don't have shared values, then
Yeah.
you got to find some sort of common ground in order to make that happen.
Yeah, it's hard enough to get things going, doing like a homestead and stuff. And so if you're not working like on the same page, you're just going to be fighting each other more than, making progress, achieving those goals. So yeah.
Yeah, it's like this stuff out here it was hard enough doing it on my own. It'd be hard enough trying to fight somebody else while doing it. So
Right. You got one hand in the garden, the other hand fighting.
yeah, exactly. That would just make it harder.
Yeah. What would you tell people that want to get started? Growing a garden, raising chickens, anything like that?
That's well, as it's in the Army, it's MET-TC dependent.
Never heard that one.
It's like mission, enemy, time, terrain. You can that's the top. I think that's the top four, but it's dependent on basically it's saying it's dependent on where you're at and what you're doing and what your goal is. So it's a kind of reverse planning method.
Sure.
For the Army. So like it depends on where you're at. If you're and with some political stuff that's happened recently, it's going to make buying land and buying a house even that much harder.
Sure.
If you're in an apartment, or if you're in a house where you can't have chickens, well then you might have to compromise a little bit. You might have to visit a farmer's market. But definitely, if you can build a garden out, that's probably the best place to start. That's what got me into it, is gardening, is just having, like a place to be able to grow your own tomatoes, or grow your own banana peppers, or I grew banana peppers and jalapenos and tomatoes for a while. So I was making my own salsa. Yeah, definitely a garden would be a good way to start. It's kind of a good gateway drug into that kind of lifestyle, is at least being able to disconnect, anything you can do to disconnect from the grocery store lifestyle, like
Yeah.
it's like, I want to make this, or I want to make that. Okay, well, I need to go to the grocery store to get that, or I need to go, to this place to do that. It's like I started with growing my own vegetables and making my own bread. And my son and that's some of my son's fondest memories, is when he was, 4 and 5 years old. And my first wife would go off to work because she was a nurse, and she worked overnight, and she'd leave the house at like 5 o'clock. And then my son and I would make pizza at home, with stuff that we grew in the garden, and then some vegetables some flour that we got at the store, but we'd use the stand mixer. Making your own bread. That's the kind of stuff that kind of gets you hooked into it, is growing your own, at least being able to grow your own vegetables. That's kind of a big thing. Learning how to make bread, even if you're not, we don't all have the space and the time to make our own flour, to make wheat, or to grow wheat, or to grind it, or whatever. But you can start just as easily with store bought, or even if you source it from somewhere else that's not necessarily a grocery store. But those are probably some of the best kind of gateway drugs, so to speak, of getting into it is gardening and making your own bread and spending time with your family.
Yeah, little those little moments really make a difference. Like it's been a quite a long time in the making, but we've been trying to get it took, I don't know, maybe 6 months for my son to finally have the courage to like crack an egg like on his own. I mean, he's 2, so like he like just like he's like, I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it, because one time he like cracked it too hard and made a big mess. And um but now he likes doing it. Now he asks for like, to make this or to make that. So it's been a lot of fun doing it that way.
And that's something that my stepdaughter's gotten into is she's asked for like cookbooks and stuff like that. It's like, well, what are her favorite things to make? Okay, well, we can plant those things and we can grow those herbs. We can grow those herbs and we can grow those vegetables and we can get those things. We can substitute ground beef for like, ground venison that we've got in
Yeah.
those are the things that we can substitute those things, and we can show them and passing it on to the next generation is we can show them that there's another way to live, and it's not attached to the system necessarily. It's not attached to the grid. It's not, bioengineered meat or bug protein or whatever it is that they're coming up
Right.
with these days.
And then your
That it's
daughter, your stepdaughter has she has an invested interest in the garden then, if she's planting stuff that she wants to make with it.
yeah, that's the idea.
Yeah.
And we can
Perfect. I love
perpetuate
that.
that by saying, okay, well, you grew this now. Now you can find ways to use it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something and my son's more of a hands-on kind of guy. So especially as he's moved into his teen years, so he's like, skills that they don't teach in schools, skills that and
Right.
his grandfather's a or does small carpentry work, and I do a lot of bigger stuff out here. Is teaching those hands-on kind of, you can your hands, the work of your hands and the sweat of your brow has value,
Mm-hmm.
and this is what's important. You have more stake in this thing if you've done something to perpetuate it, as
Yeah.
opposed to, like when you're built like my neighbors. It's like you built a house. You built a house with your own hands. That's something that's important to you.
Yeah.
As opposed to like where we were living in a neighborhood where it was cookie cutter, and they would hire a group of immigrants at Lowe's to come and do framing for a day. That doesn't have any value to me. But
Right.
doing the work out here myself has a way more value to me personally. Like I have a vested interest in maintaining all of this, simply because I put my own I put my own soul into it. Like this is important to me. So that stuff like that, like teaching the next generation that when you put your own sweat and your own tears and your own blood into something, that it has infinitely more value than these things that you buy at Walmart. So
Yes.
that's at base. I think that's what's important to me is being able to pass it on to somebody else.
Yeah. The next generation. I love that.
And they're going to
So
need it. The way things that I feel things are going is that they're going to need it far more than I ever did. And I learned a lot of these skills from my grandmother,
sure.
who grew up in the middle of the Depression. You know, she was born in the 20s and then lived through the 30s and the 40s. So she knew all about gardening and canning and stuff like that. She canned until the day she died. Probably not exactly the day she died, but she canned up until she couldn't
Sure.
anymore. Right. We were finding canned vegetables and stuff like that in her house after, when we went into to organize things afterwards. Is that we were finding those things where she had just went to the store while they were on sale and canned it, because that was, if she couldn't grow it, then she could buy it cheap and then do it on her own. That was just skills that I grew up with, that I didn't appreciate really at the time, because I grew up in the 80s and the 90s. In times of great abundance. And now we're reaching time periods where I can't find 5/8 inch plywood or 5/8 inch OSB at a hardware store, and that's like a standard size.
Yeah.
I can't find it. So hard times are important it's important to galvanize the next generation and our children against those things. And I'm having to go back to things that my grandmother taught me that I didn't appreciate at the time, but
Right.
I'm sure having to use them now.
Right. 40, 50 years later or something like that. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Well, like I said, I watched my grandmother. So my grandparents, and that was kind of what spurred on, having the garden and doing a lot of this stuff, is that I remembered what my grandparents did, even in the 90s, in periods of, like I said, periods of great abundance. When you could buy unlimited quantities of whatever at any grocery store. My grandparents were still growing it in their backyard. As my parents got married next to their garden shed in 1981.
That's funny.
So, and there's photographic evidence of this. So it's like, I'm there. I have a picture of my grandmother on my refrigerator in the house, and I look at that picture sometimes and I go, man, I really wish that I hadn't taken that for granted when I was younger, because I'm definitely needing it now, and I'm definitely needing to pass it on, because it's just the way things are it's getting to that point where it's really important. So,
right. Do you want to let people know where they can find you, follow you, see what you're doing?
Yeah. So YouTube is Lofty Pines Homestead. I definitely appreciate the subscription and the likes, and I've had actually people dislike my videos. I've kind of wanted to create a video just for those two people that have. I don't get it, but okay.
Do it.
It's just me doing random stuff. I'm on Instagram. Well, we're on Instagram. It's not just me. My wife also has control of that account as well. So it's Lofty Pines Homestead on Instagram. There's a Twitter account that I don't really use anymore. I got a little spicy a couple of times, so
Do you get in trouble for a couple things?
Yeah.
Whoops.
Yeah. I can be firebrand when I want to be. So there's a Twitter account. I mean, you can follow me on Twitter, but I'm not really going to see it. Facebook's
Sure.
there's a Facebook page, Lofty Pines Homestead, you can all find. I think that's about it. Yeah, I don't have any other socials. Well, I've got a Rumble page, but I haven't updated it in a very long time. So it's the same, Lofty Pines Homestead. But
Gotcha. I'll add those all to the show notes. And yeah, just out of curiosity, what are you trying to do with your social media accounts? Just like kind of post what you're doing, and just kind of, if something happens, and if not, whatever.
that's usually what happens. I was trying to do a schedule there for a couple of weeks where I was trying to post every Monday or every Wednesday, but I said, like I've said in several of those videos on YouTube, is that I am terrible at posting
It's hard.
and terrible at finishing videos on time or with any sort of regularity. So I usually end up with a short or several shorts in a row.
Yeah.
So just pay attention for the shorts, and that's mostly that's a lot of where my brothers-in-law think that's absolutely hilarious. My shorts are they think my shorts are hilarious. So
I was watching the longer stuff a little bit. So yeah, I'll have to check out those shorts.
yeah, my brother-in-law,
Yeah.
both of my wife's brothers think that my brothers-in-law, they think that that's comedy gold. Like I don't know what it is. Like apparently I'm funny in shorts when I only have about 15 or 20 seconds. So it's weird.
Well, Russell, I appreciate you coming on and giving me your time and sharing some stories and lessons learned, everything. I appreciate it.
Yeah, there's certainly more. There's going to be more somewhere.
Good. I'm looking forward to those shorts.
Oh yeah.
Well, all right. You have a good night.
Oh, you too.
Thank you.
I am Matt DeRozier of FarmHopLife. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe and visit farmhoplife.com.
Inside of the city, the people are crazy, out of their minds, they ain't got a clue. We gone away, headed west for Montana, left family and friends, all I got now is you. We both got new jobs, a house and a homestead, thinking this was the life, all that there'd be. After our firstborn, you had to stay home. That's when the work got in the way for me. Well, I started Farm Hop Life. We'll come to your farm to help and to wander. Me and the family, a truck and an RV. Send us a message and